This is Dory Clark with Smith Executive Education. Welcome to our podcast, Take Control of Your Online Reputation. Today we're going to be talking about how to create a great LinkedIn profile. And our guest is Brian Honigman. Brian is a marketing consultant, freelance writer, and professional speaker. And he has an illustrious resume on these topics. He has spoken about these issues at UNICEF, NYU, HuffPost Live, and lots of other speaking engagements. He's also a frequent contributing columnist for Mashable, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, The Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Magazine, and many more. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. And let me start out with a question for you. What is your definition of a great LinkedIn profile? What does it look like?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. A great LinkedIn profile clearly and concisely illustrates, your entire career path. So whereas the resume is supposed to kind of be like curated to show what's most relevant when you're applying to a job, your LinkedIn and a successful one shows the entire evolution of your career. The profile is working for you constantly. Whereas like a resume, you have to really put it out there and get it in front of the right people. Whereas this timeline of your career path is there online, constantly working for you in terms of trying to drive discovery for job opportunities and other great opportunities that help your professional career.
Interesting. That sounds really fascinating because I would imagine that a lot of people would think, oh, I have to so carefully calibrate my LinkedIn profile. I need to curate it and figure out what I should include and what I shouldn't. But it sounds like you're saying you should just kind of put everything on there. Is that true?
Yes and no. It's a little nuanced, right? So I think it's really important to show a majority of your career history, but I don't think it should be so extensive that the experiences that you've had throughout your career are hidden in any way. I've had many jobs throughout my career, and over the years, I would slowly remove things from the past. Like, for instance, I had like 4 internships that I did throughout my undergrad. I thought it was really important to include them, especially in the beginning of my career on my LinkedIn when I didn't have as much professional experience, right? That was my professional experience to get the jobs and to continue to drive my visibility as a professional. But as the years went on and I started to get more experience from jobs and side gigs and speaking engagement and what have you, I thought it'd be best to remove anything that didn't particularly apply anymore. So for instance, I used to work at a TV station as an internship for 3 months. And it's not negative for my career experience, but there was so much on my LinkedIn profile that I thought could be potentially too comprehensive. And I want to be able to give a recruiter or someone checking out my profile a really quick snapshot as opposed to inundate them with too many details, right? So I still have a nice timeline from start to finish, but I've over the years taken out a couple things here and there just to make it refined. So I definitely think that you should include everything. It should be curated from start to finish, kind of like an accurate description of where you've come from and where you're going to be going in your career.
Yeah, that's helpful. So you want to have all of the key and most important parts, but if something over time becomes less critical, like a short engagement, an internship, something like that, that's what we call. That makes sense. So I know that in talking to you, and part of the reason why I was interested in speaking to you about this, you've mentioned that you actually have gotten business through your LinkedIn profile, that people have found you, and that it's been a successful marketing tool for you. Can you talk a little bit about how that worked? How did people find you, and for what kinds of things?
Well, I think having an accurate LinkedIn profile to highlight your career endeavors, it serves 2 main purposes, right? Discovery, and then reaffirming where you're at in your career to your existing network and whatever your network may look like. So let's start with discovery. So I've been lucky enough to get contacted by recruiters throughout my career, potential like partnerships, other professionals trying to network, most recently clients looking for what I do on a daily basis as a consultant. Like I mentioned earlier, it's your LinkedIn profile is always working for you, right? So by having all this relevant information that's curated about your career, there are certain keywords that are present throughout your profile. So a lot of the time, a lot of people will search something relevant. So for instance, if they're looking for a freelance writer, they'll search it. And in many cases, my profile will come up. And anyone can do this. It's basically kind of optimizing your profile to be more search friendly within the LinkedIn ecosystem, right? once they do land on your profile for those relevant search terms, and then it's your opportunity to impress them one way or the other, right? So if there's no point in optimizing your profile with all these keywords that you're looking to drive for the right kind of people to your profile if you don't have the experience, because then it's just they're going to come, check out your profile, and then leave, and that doesn't serve a purpose for anyone, right? You want to incorporate the right keywords into your relevant experience to help get that out there in front of a much larger audience. So that's two parts. So typically find you through search through the keywords, and then you have to clearly illustrate the experience you're looking for on the profile. Then the second part is kind of reaffirming, what you're doing throughout your career on LinkedIn through your profile. So whether that's through the LinkedIn, their newly added blog function, or you're just sharing other content on LinkedIn relevant to your expertise, your future career endeavors, it presents a wonderful opportunity for people already in your network, whether that's a past client, current client, one of your employees, your former boss, what have you, for you to pop up in their feed and it kind of acts as another reminder. You share one of your articles you just recently did, or a podcast interview. I've seen you, often share your material and your content that you're trying to let people know that you're contributing to. It's just another reminder to get you on the radar of the people that you want to stay in contact with, right? And it's kind of in a peripheral way. You don't really have to put that much effort into, updating your LinkedIn a few times a day so that the people in your network can see where you're at and what you're up to.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Brian. So in terms of the keywords that we have here, I see on yours, looking at your profile, you have a lot of things listed: marketing, consulting, freelance writing, digital marketing, digital strategies, social media management. So how did you come up with the keywords, and how would somebody listening to this know what keywords would be best for them to include in their profile?
So again, definitely it's important to focus on the quality, right? You want to have keywords that really express what you know and what you do, what your experience illustrates. What I like to do is think about the intent, the search intent of a person that I'd like to find my profile. The search intent means, what are they looking for? So in my case, I'm looking for a company that needs help with their marketing. What type of professional would they be looking for on LinkedIn to help them with their marketing? And with that said, what words would they use to find that person? So it's up to you then to kind of think of the different variations of keywords based off of that. So breaking apart their intent to find the right people to help them, you can kind of come up with a couple of variations of what you do. And you can also do research on LinkedIn and say, hey, I do marketing, I do design, and do some searches for yourself and see what pops up, see what other people are putting on their profiles, and try to naturally incorporate them so that you have probably 4 to 5 synonyms for what you do use throughout your profile organically.
So I heard two interesting things. One is that you're suggesting that we should get into the minds of the people that you want to find you.
Sure.
So if you're looking for clients, if you're maybe looking for a job and you want an employer to potentially find you, you need to think, what are the terms that they would use and what would they be looking for, and then optimize your profile for that. So literally listing the keywords, but also sprinkling the keywords into the descriptions of how you describe your personal profile, your job descriptions, etc. That's interesting. And then the second part is that you suggested, much as a employer or someone seeking to connect with interesting people would do, you should actually do the searches and see who comes up, what words they're using, so you can essentially research the competition a little bit and learn from them. So I think those are great tips. Now, the other point that you raised earlier, which I thought was great, is that once someone comes to your profile, you want to make sure that what they find is really robust and substantial, and that you're able to essentially prove that you have expertise in this thing they're interested in. And you were talking about ways that people could do that, so including content essentially in their profiles, such as LinkedIn blogs or things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that for people who aren't familiar with the idea, which is fairly new, of being able to blog on LinkedIn? What does that look like, and what kinds of things should people even be thinking about blogging about?
Yeah, so when someone lands on your profile, when you publish on LinkedIn, which is a relatively new feature and allows anyone with a LinkedIn profile to publish, professional content around the subjects that they know well. Those blog posts, once they are published, appear in your feed. So again, reaffirming where you are professionally and kind of putting the feelers out there that also these blog posts live on your profile. So when someone does visit your profile, they're able to see your top 3 most recent blog posts, right? And they can then click on them and see if you can really back up. Say if you are a graphic designer and you wrote an article about graphic design, are you able to back up that expertise with really compelling information that helps that person, researching your profile? That's when you kind of are able to gain their trust that you are who you say you are, right? On each of your individual roles that you've had in the past, you're able to, or rather you should, include bullets or a thorough paragraph about your experience in that particular role, whether a full-time role, an internship, speaking engagement, what have you. That's another opportunity to really illustrate how in-depth your expertise goes.
So you don't just want to list what you've done. You want to actually explicate it and talk about, hey, here's what I did. Here's what the job actually was.
Sure.
A big part, I think, of a LinkedIn profile, one of the first things that people see is the personal statement up at the top, right underneath your picture. It's the official title. It's just your summary, Sure. But you have a pretty in-depth summary. What do you think, if someone is crafting this, that they should include as their self-description? What makes for something that'll grab a reader?
So it's almost like you're writing an article about yourself, right? And you want to really talk about yourself in third person to give kind of like, almost a press release, right, of what you've accomplished throughout your career. So first thing being career highlights, and again, focusing on that start to finish or start to your present day professional endeavors, so that the person visiting your profile has a strong understanding, okay, so they've really taken all the necessary steps in this field to get to where they are today, and they really understand their particular area of expertise, and I want to work with them, or I want to reach out with them, or partner with them, or take some kind of action now that I'm on their profile. Definitely career highlights, any accolades, particularly won any awards or internally or externally, if you were ever included in an article, did any speaking engagements. I think the summary is a wonderful place to not only share your career highlights from your various positions, but also sharing recognition of your career outside of the workplace. That's always a wonderful way to position yourself as a professional. And this is the space to do it, right? This is right below, your name and your title and your current role. It's one of the first things they read about you. So it's definitely a great place to list those things. And then kind of tying back into the keywords thing that we talked about previously and optimizing your profile for them. One thing that I don't see individuals do enough is list their specialties in the summary. So I would come up with 1 to 20 specialties, different keywords that relate to your profession and the keywords that you want someone to type in to find you, and include them at the bottom. By listing your specialties in this manner, it's still organic. It still looks like it flows with the formatting of the summary. It's not spammy anyway, but it also helps readers and people searching for your profile. So those are the main components. Accomplishments from start to finish throughout your career, accolades, definitely outside of the workplace if possible, and definitely your specialties. Oh, and of course, how people can get in contact with you. It depends on your personal use of LinkedIn. For sure, some people don't want to be contacted, right? So if you're an engineer at Pinterest or some other highly sought after position in the working world, you're going to get recruiters contacting you all the time, and maybe you don't want to be contacted. So it's not for everyone, but most of us want to be able to be reached very quickly and easily. So I definitely recommend including your contact information in the summary of your LinkedIn profile to make it super easy for people to reach you.
That's great. I think that's really helpful, Brian. Now, I get a lot of questions from people when it comes to LinkedIn about who they should friend. I think a lot of us get friend requests from people that maybe we don't know that well. Some people we don't even know at all. What is the appropriate etiquette for something like that? How should people think about that?
So this is definitely something that I've come across pretty frequently as well. And I think the way LinkedIn kind of words it, you're only supposed to be connecting with people that you know deeply, that you have this strong professional connection with. And in my opinion, that's just not the case. You definitely want to be connecting with all the people that you know online and offline and have some existing relationship with, right? But you also want to use LinkedIn very proactively instead of just relying on people discovering your profile and seeing where you're at in their feeds. you want to be proactive and reach out to other people that are of interest within your own industry, right? One of the ways to do so is find a common connection with someone, right? So like you just mentioned, sometimes you'll get random, requests for people to, friend you or become a connection, and you have no connection with them whatsoever. You don't understand the context of them wanting to send an invitation to you. It's not very clear. I would suggest, if you are reaching out to someone, that you have a very specific reason for doing so, right? When you look at their profile, and ideally it'll be public so you can look at it, see how they are positioning themselves and see if you can provide value to them and they can provide value to you, and see if that's quite clear. And think of some ways on how you can, before connecting with them, how you could work together. And that could be something as very little as giving them some advice or following up on an article they read and said how much it helped you, or asking to interview them or some capacity. Find some reason and some value that you can provide to them before connecting. And then once you do have that all kind of concise in your mind, you want to send them an invitation, but not just the generic message that LinkedIn automatically populates, right? That's when you see invitations that are random, that don't really add any value. But if someone takes the time when they're trying to connect with someone they don't yet know, write out a nice message. I know you're limited in characters to what you can say. Be very concise and specific, and make clear your intentions. Something as simple as, I read your article last week on this particular subject. I was really impressed. It really helped me. I would love to connect on here further and keep the conversation going. Something as simple as that, many people don't take the time to do. And that's all the difference between reaching out to someone that you do know and reaching out to someone that you don't know. You just have to put a little bit more time into that process. And I think that's one of the key things that people tend to forget.
Very helpful. Now, Brian, do you have a premium account on LinkedIn, and how important or not important do you think it is for professionals to have that?
I do not have a premium account. I've tested the premium account because they will offer, a 30-day kind of free trial to let you see if it, adds any benefits to you, right? I didn't find it useful for my purposes. That doesn't mean it's not useful for other reasons for other people. One of the biggest benefits to having a LinkedIn premium profile is one, for recruiters or people in the hiring space in general. If you're a hiring manager, or you do a lot of hiring for your particular role, but you're not necessarily in HR. The premium tool allows you to look at more people's accounts, even if they have them private, reach out to people, even if you're not connected, which LinkedIn limits. If you don't have a connection with someone, you can't just message them. Also, I think it's beneficial for an individual if they're looking for a job. It's an investment for sure to get a LinkedIn premium account, at least try it for a few months to see if it impacts your search in any capacity. And in that case, that's also quite helpful for you when you're reaching out to people that you may not be connected with yet, and write a more extensive message. So that'll be great for your potential networking efforts to find that job that's a fit. And also you're able to see in more detail who's viewed your profile in recent days, and a little bit more comprehensive analytics, where you get that with the free version of your LinkedIn profile, but it's a lot more limited. And that can be helpful in saying, okay, so person A, B, and C did come to my LinkedIn profile, this recruiting manager, this hiring manager, but then nothing happened. They didn't follow up with me. So it's those analytics may be worth paying for to get a little better insight into what might not be working and what is working for your job search. I'm sure there is other applications, but I think the best two for spending if you're in hiring or if you're looking for a job.
Wonderful. And Brian, my last question for you is about endorsements and recommendations. Recommendations, of course, are where people will actually write out, a couple of sentences. Oh, I worked with Brian. He's fantastic. An endorsement is the thing where you just click a button and says, yes, Brian knows about these skills. Some people are a little confused about the value of either or both. How useful or not useful do you think that either of these are?
So I definitely, without a doubt, think the recommendations are a lot more impactful for your LinkedIn presence than the endorsements. The endorsements certainly don't hurt. They're almost like a like on Facebook, if you want to think it that way. It's a very easy way for someone in your network to say, hey, Brian or Kevin or Tom or Dory knows this particular skill, click, and then you get on your profile, you get a sum of all those endorsements under each particular skill that you've chosen to list. I don't think a recruiter or a potential client is going to look at endorsements on LinkedIn and say, this person is the expert based off that solely, right? It's a nice added little perk, but it's not the most high quality way to build out your profile. Both endorsements and recommendations impact the visibility of your profile in LinkedIn search, similarly to the keywords you've chosen to include on your profile. So that's something to keep in mind for sure, because LinkedIn algorithms think if you have more endorsements and a plethora of recommendations that relate to the keywords that you've chosen to include on your profile, that you're a more credible expert in your field, right? That's definitely a reason for both. But to choose spending time on one over the other, I would definitely work more extensively with working on recommendations. So recommendations are wonderful because you can kind of say a few paragraphs about someone in your network. Obviously, you would like to get as many quality recommendations on your profile, but I think the best way to start with the whole recommendation process is start recommending others in your network, right? People that you've worked with in the past at past roles, someone that you've partnered with, your editor at a publication you've written for, someone that you've networked with previously. It's a great way to follow up some type of engagement, right? So say if you just worked on a project with a client, if you just came back from a networking event and someone gave you really great advice on a certain subject that you've developed this relationship with, it's a wonderful tool to thank them for their time and kind of build rapport between both of you, because it helps give them more visibility and it shines a positive light on your contribution to their greater visibility in their career. So I think they're a pretty easy way. I mean, it's only a paragraph to help support others in your network and kind of give them value and help stay on their radar. But it's also a great way to drive visibility back to your own profile as well. The best tip for generating more recommendations for yourself is to ask for them. A lot of the time you'll get them organically by providing value to your network. But if someone says, I am so thrilled, that you were able to help me. Thank you so much for working that problem for us for free. That article was really helpful. I'd love to, give it back to you in any way that I can. I think that's a really good opportunity to say, thank you. I really appreciate the praise. If you wouldn't mind, and if you have the time, please feel free to send me a recommendation on LinkedIn. And that's always a great way just to follow up your networking efforts.
Excellent tip. Brian, thank you so much. If people want to learn more or get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's great, but also I'm always available on Twitter, just twitter.com/Brian Honigman, or just Google me and email me, and my email is available on the website.
Great. Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you.